The rain pattered against the windshield of my Subaru Forester, creating a hypnotic rhythm that did nothing to calm my frayed nerves. I checked the time on my dashboard, 8:47 p.m. According to the text message I'd intercepted on Ethan's iPad this morning, they would be here by 9 m. The hotel parking lot was half empty, which gave me a perfect view of the entrance. I'd chosen my spot carefully, tucked away between a delivery van and a concrete pillar, hidden but with a clear sightline. My hands trembled as I adjusted the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of myself. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Hollowed cheeks, dark circles under bloodshot eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. 15 years of marriage had sculpted me into someone I no longer knew. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. I took another swig from the flask I'd filled with Jack Daniels, Ethan's favorite, and winced as it burned down my throat. The bottle of anxiety medication in my purse called to me, but I needed clarity tonight. I needed to see it with my own eyes. My phone buzzed. A text from our daughter, Lily. "Mom, where are you?" Dad's not answering his phone either. I'm worried. I stared at the message, my chest tight. 17 years old and still believing in fairy tales. Still believing her father was working late at the office, just as I had for months. Until today, until I found those messages. "Don't worry, sweetie. Just running errands. Be home soon. Love you." The lie came easily. Too easily. A pair of headlights swept across the parking lot and my breath caught. A sleek black BMW, Ethan's company car, pulled into a space near the hotel entrance. My husband of 15 years stepped out, dressed in the charcoal suit I'd bought him for our anniversary last month. He checked his watch, then scanned the parking lot nervously. 2 minutes later, another car arrived. A silver Audi. The woman who emerged was everything I wasn't. Tall, blonde, at least 10 years younger. She walked toward Ethan with confident strides, and when they embraced, the knife that had been twisting in my gut for hours plunged deeper. I turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life like the rage building inside me. My foot hovered over the gas pedal as something primal took over. In that moment, 15 years of memories flashed before my eyes. Our wedding day, the birth of our daughter, family vacations, Sunday breakfasts, and countless moments that had shaped our life together, all of it built on what now felt like quicksand. I didn't recognize the sound that escaped my lips as I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The tires screamed against the wet pavement as I aimed directly for the BMW, the car I had helped choose, the car I had washed countless times, the car that was now the perfect target for my pain. The impact came with a deafening crash of metal against metal, glass shattering into 1,000 pieces, just like my heart. 6 months earlier. "Rebecca, did you see my blue tie? The Dior one?" Ethan called from our walk-in closet. I was in the bathroom, applying the last touches of makeup before Ethan's company gala. At 43, I'd become an expert at hiding the subtle signs of aging that seemed to appear overnight. The fine lines around my eyes, the slight loosening of skin along my jawline. "Check the dry cleaning bag," I replied, dabbing concealer under my eyes. "I picked it up yesterday." Ethan appeared in the doorway, already dressed in tailored pants and a crisp white shirt, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled. At 45, he still had the same magnetic presence that had drawn me to him when we were in college. Confident, charming, with laugh lines that deepened when he smiled. Lately, though, those smiles had become rare, replaced by distracted glances and late nights at the office. "Found it," he said, looping the tie around his collar. "Are you almost ready?" "We should have left 10 minutes ago." I suppressed a sigh. 5 more minutes. Sorry." Ethan checked his phone, his brow furrowing. "I'll be downstairs." As I finished getting ready, I couldn't ignore the tension that had been building between us. We moved around each other like satellites in different orbits, never quite connecting. When had that happened? Was it after his promotion to partner at the architectural firm? After my decision to scale back my own career as a freelance graphic designer to be more present for Lily? Or had it been happening so gradually that neither of us noticed until the distance became a chasm? I descended the stairs in a floor-length navy dress that I'd bought specifically for tonight. Ethan was in the kitchen typing furiously on his phone. He didn't look up until I cleared my throat. "Wow," he said, his eyes widening slightly. "You look beautiful." For a moment, I caught a glimpse of the old Ethan, the one who couldn't take his eyes off me, the one who made me feel like the most desirable woman in the world. "Ready to go?" I asked, trying not to sound too eager for his approval. "Yes, just—" His phone chimed, and he glanced down at it. "Just finishing up an email to a client." The moment was gone, replaced by the familiar wall between us. The gala was held at the Hawthorne Hotel, an upscale venue downtown. As we entered the ballroom, Ethan immediately transformed into the charismatic architect everyone admired, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, introducing me to people whose names I immediately forgot. I nursed a glass of champagne, smiling when appropriate, but feeling increasingly like an accessory rather than a partner. "Rebecca, have you met Diana?" Ethan's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "She's the new project manager for the Riverside development." The woman before me extended a manicured hand. Tall, blonde, impeccably dressed in a red sheath dress that highlighted a figure that had clearly never endured childbirth or middle age. "It's so nice to finally meet you," Diana said, her smile perfectly calibrated. "Ethan talks about you and your daughter all the time." I shook her hand, noting the firmness of her grip. "All good things, I hope." "Of course," she laughed, touching Ethan's arm lightly. "He's quite the family man." Something in her tone, or perhaps the way Ethan shifted slightly under her touch, sent a ripple of unease through me. But I dismissed it as my own insecurity. Diana was young, ambitious, and clearly good at her job. Nothing more. "Diana's been instrumental in landing the Franklin Tower project," Ethan explained. "The firm's biggest contract to date." "Ethan's being modest," Diana countered. "His designs are what sealed the deal." The client was blown away. I watched their interaction with growing discomfort, the easy banter, the shared glances, the professional admiration that seemed to border on something else. Later that night, as Ethan drove us home in silence, I found myself replaying the evening in my mind, focusing on each moment he and Diana had interacted. Was I imagining things? Had years of marriage made me paranoid, or had I detected something genuine? "Diana seems very competent," I ventured, watching Ethan's profile in the dim light of the dashboard. "She is," he replied evenly. "Best hire we've made in years." "You two seem to work well together." Ethan glanced at me briefly. "Is there something you want to ask me, Rebecca?" The directness of his question caught me off guard. "No, just making conversation." He returned his attention to the road. "It's been a long night." "Let's not do this now." "Do what?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "I was just commenting on your new colleague." Ethan sighed. "You have that tone. The one that means you're fishing for something." "I don't have a tone," I protested, even as I recognized the defensiveness creeping into my voice. "Look, I'm tired. I've got an early meeting tomorrow, and I still have to prep for it when we get home." The conversation died, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few months, I noticed changes in Ethan. Small things at first: new cologne, more attention to his appearance, longer hours at the office. He installed a passcode on his phone, something he'd never done before. When I asked about it, he cited client confidentiality. Reasonable, but it felt like another brick in the wall between us. Lily noticed too. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, a rarity now that she was deep in the throes of teenage life, she asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Is Dad having an affair?" The knife I was using to chop vegetables slipped, nearly nicking my finger. "What? Why would you ask that?" Lily shrugged, but her eyes, so much like Ethan's, were serious. "Mia's dad had an affair last year. She said it started with him being on his phone all the time and working late." "Like Dad." I set down the knife, choosing my words carefully. Your father works hard, Lily. His job is demanding, especially with this new project. So you don't think he's cheating? No, I said firmly, wishing I felt as confident as I sounded. I don't, but the question lingered, growing louder each time Ethan came home late smelling of unfamiliar perfume, each time he took calls in another room, each time he seemed distant during our increasingly rare moments of intimacy. One Tuesday afternoon, I decided to surprise Ethan for lunch. I hadn't been to his office in months, and a part of me wanted reassurance, to see him in his professional environment, surrounded by people who weren't Diana. When I arrived at the sleek downtown high-rise that housed Barrett and Matthews Architecture, the receptionist greeted me with a smile. Mrs. Thorne, what a lovely surprise. Should I tell Mr. Thorne you're here? Actually, I thought I'd surprise him, I replied. Is he in a meeting? The receptionist checked her computer. He's out to lunch, actually. Left about 20 minutes ago. Oh. I tried to hide my disappointment. With clients? No, just Diana, I believe. They often grab lunch together when working on the Franklin project. My stomach clenched. I see. Did they mention where they were going? I think they were heading to Basilico's. It's just around the corner. I thanked her and left, telling myself there was nothing unusual about colleagues having lunch. But instead of heading to the Italian restaurant, I found myself walking back to my car. A hollow feeling expanding in my chest. That night, as Ethan and I moved around each other in our kitchen, me preparing a salad, him heating up leftovers, I worked up the courage to ask, "How was lunch today?" Ethan paused, a container of pasta halfway to the microwave. Fine, just ate at my desk while going through renderings. The lie settled between us like a physical presence. I could have confronted him then, told him I'd been to his office, but something held me back. Perhaps it was fear of what would follow, or perhaps I wasn't ready to face what I already suspected. Instead, I nodded and continued chopping tomatoes, each slice precise and controlled, even as I felt my world beginning to unravel. The next week, I found myself sitting in my car outside Basilico's at noon, watching the entrance. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that this wasn't who I was, a suspicious wife spying on her husband. Yet I couldn't stop myself. At 12:15 they emerged, Ethan and Diana walking closely together, laughing at something I couldn't hear. As they reached the sidewalk, Ethan's hand briefly touched the small of her back, an intimate gesture that sent a wave of nausea through me. I started the car and drove home, tears blurring my vision. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, insecure, suspicious, desperate. But wasn't that what betrayal did? Turned you into a version of yourself you never thought possible. For weeks, I collected evidence like a detective building a case. Late-night texts, weekend work emergencies, the growing emotional distance. Each piece on its own could be explained away, but together they formed a picture I could no longer ignore. The final confirmation came on a rainy Tuesday morning. Ethan had left early for a breakfast meeting, and I was gathering laundry when I noticed his iPad on the nightstand. He rarely used it, preferring his laptop for work and his phone for everything else. On impulse, I picked it up. It wasn't password protected. Ethan probably assumed I'd never check it. His messaging app was open, revealing weeks of exchanges with Diana. As I scrolled through them, my hands trembling, the truth I'd been circling for months finally crystallized into undeniable reality. Can't wait for tomorrow night. Same place, 9 p.m., I'll get there first. These meetings are getting risky. Rebecca almost caught me last time. Worth the risk. Need you? Same room? Room 412, don't be late. I set the iPad down carefully, as if it might burn me. Tomorrow night. The Hawthorne Hotel, where we'd attended the gala, where I'd first met Diana. Room 412. Now I had a time and a place. Now I knew. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I moved through my routine mechanically. Laundry, groceries, dinner preparation. When Ethan came home, I greeted him with a kiss on the cheek and asked about his day, as if my world hadn't just imploded. He talked about client meetings and deadline pressures, and I nodded in all the right places. marveling at how easily we both lied to each other now. After dinner, as Ethan retreated to his home office and Lily disappeared into her room with homework, I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by family photos that now felt like artifacts from another life. What was I going to do with this knowledge? Confront him? Demand a divorce? Pretend I never saw the messages? None of those options felt right. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed irrefutable proof, not just for Ethan, but for myself. Because despite everything, a small part of me still hoped I was wrong. The next day, I told Ethan and Lily I had a girls' night planned with friends. Ethan barely looked up from his phone as he wished me a good time. Lily, engrossed in college application essays, gave me a distracted wave from the dining table. As I left our suburban home in my reliable Subaru, I felt as if I were stepping out of my life and into someone else's, someone desperate and reckless. The flask of Jack Daniels was a last-minute decision, grabbed from Ethan's liquor cabinet as liquid courage for what lay ahead. And so I found myself in the parking lot of the Hawthorne Hotel on a rainy Wednesday night, watching and waiting for my husband to arrive with his lover. The impact of my Subaru slamming into Ethan's BMW echoed across the parking lot like a thunderclap. Metal crumpled, glass exploded, and the alarm began wailing, a high-pitched scream that matched the one building in my throat. Through the cracked windshield, I saw Ethan and Diana frozen in shock, their faces illuminated by the flashing lights of the damaged cars. Then Ethan was running toward me, his expression morphing from confusion to horror as he recognized the Subaru. "Rebecca," he shouted, yanking open my door. "What the hell are you doing? Are you hurt?" I stared at him, this man I had loved for almost half my life, and felt nothing but cold rage. "Am I hurt?" I echoed, my voice unnaturally calm. "That's what you're worried about right now?" The smell of alcohol from the spilled flask filled the car. Ethan's eyes darted to it, then back to my face. "Have you been drinking?" "Jesus, Rebecca, you could have killed someone?" I unbuckled my seatbelt and stepped out of the car, surprisingly steady on my feet despite the alcohol and adrenaline coursing through my system. Diana stood a few yards away, her perfect composure finally cracked, one hand covering her mouth in shock. "You haven't introduced me properly to your colleague," I said, gesturing toward Diana. "We only met briefly at the gala, though I suppose you've been very thorough in your professional collaboration since then." Ethan's face paled. "Rebecca, this isn't— Don't!" I cut him off, my voice sharp enough to make him flinch. "Don't you dare tell me this isn't what it looks like." "I saw the messages, Ethan. Room 412, right? The usual place?" Diana took a step back, her eyes darting between us. "I should go." "No, stay," I insisted, walking toward her. "You're as much a part of this as he is." "Rebecca," Ethan grabbed my arm, but I shook him off violently. "How long?" I demanded, my voice rising. "How long have you been sleeping with my husband?" A small crowd had begun to gather at a safe distance, witnesses to the unraveling of my marriage in this rain-soaked parking lot. Someone mentioned calling security. Someone else was already on the phone with the police. Diana looked at Ethan, her expression pleading. When he offered no guidance, she straightened her shoulders and faced me directly. 4 months, she said quietly. "But it's more than sex." I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign to my own ears. "Let me guess. You understand each other. He's never felt this way before. You connect on a deeper level." Diana's silence was confirmation enough. I turned back to Ethan, who stood in the rain looking utterly lost, a far cry from the confident, charming man I'd married. 15 years, I said, my voice breaking. 15 years, Ethan. We have a daughter. A life. And you threw it all away for what? Hotel room trysts with someone half your age? That's not fair, Diana interjected. I'm 34 and I don't care how old you are, I shouted, rounding on her. I don't care who you are. You knew he was married. You knew about me, about Lily. You didn't care. I never meant to hurt anyone, she said, her eyes glistening with tears that seemed genuine. I fell in love with him. I know that's no excuse, but love? I echoed, the word bitter on my tongue. You call sneaking around, lying, destroying a family, you call that love? In the distance, sirens wailed, growing louder with each passing second. The reality of what I'd done began to sink in. I had deliberately crashed my car into Ethan's. Property damage. Possible DUI. I could be arrested. What would happen to Lily? The thought of our daughter snapped me back to reality. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked, stepping closer. "Calling Lily," I replied, scrolling through my contacts. "Someone needs to be with her tonight. It won't be me, and it certainly won't be you. Rebecca, wait." Ethan's voice had lost its defensive edge. "Let's talk about this." "Not here, not like this. Now you want to talk?" I looked up at him, really seeing him for the first time since the crash. He was soaked from the rain, his expensive suit clinging to him, his hair plastered to his forehead. He looked older, smaller somehow. "It's too late for talking, Ethan." "Mom?" The voice cut through the chaos like a knife. I turned slowly, already knowing what I would see but praying I was wrong. Lily stood at the edge of the gathering crowd, rain dripping from her dark hair, her eyes wide with confusion and hurt. Behind her, I recognized the car of her friend Mia, who must have driven her here. "Lily," I breathed, horror washing over me. "What are you doing here?" She stepped forward, looking from me to Ethan to the wrecked cars. "I tracked your phone," she said, her voice small yet accusing. "You said you were with friends, but the location showed you here." I was worried. Of course she had tracked my phone. I had installed the family tracking app myself after she started driving, insisting it was for her safety. I never thought it would lead to this moment. My teenage daughter witnessing the implosion of her parents' marriage in the most public, humiliating way possible. "Sweetheart," Ethan began, reaching toward her. Lily backed away from him, her expression hardening. "Don't," she said, echoing my earlier rejection. "I heard everything. I know what you did." The police arrived then, their presence adding to the surreal quality of the scene. 2 officers approached cautiously, taking in the damaged vehicles, the gathering crowd, the palpable tension between the 3 adults and the distraught teenager. "Is everyone all right? Anyone injured?" the older officer asked, his hand resting on his belt. "We're fine," Ethan answered quickly. "Just a misunderstanding." The officer looked skeptical. "Sir, this looks like more than a misunderstanding. We're going to need statements from everyone involved." As the officers began separating us for questioning, I caught Lily's eye. The devastation on her face mirrored the chaos in my heart. In trying to confront Ethan's betrayal, I had only succeeded in dragging our daughter into the wreckage. The younger officer approached me, notepad in hand. "Ma'am, have you been drinking tonight?" I could lie, but what was the point? The evidence was all around me. The flask in my car, the smell on my breath, the recklessness of my actions. "Yes," I admitted, my voice hollow. "I have." "I'm going to need you to take a breathalyzer test," he said, his tone professional but not unkind. As I nodded in resignation, I saw Lily being led away by the other officer, presumably to get her statement. Ethan stood with Diana near the hotel entrance, both looking shell-shocked. In the span of 15 minutes, everything had changed. There was no going back from this moment. The breathalyzer confirmed what I already knew. I was over the legal limit. Not drastically, but enough. The officer informed me that I was being detained on suspicion of driving under the influence and criminal damage to property. As he recited my rights, I saw Ethan arguing with the other officer, gesturing toward me. "Your husband says he doesn't want to press charges for the damage to his vehicle," my officer informed me after conferring with his colleague. "But the DUI is non-negotiable. We'll need to take you in for processing." I nodded numbly. Of course Ethan wouldn't press charges. That would only make the scandal worse, draw more attention to his affair. Always managing appearances, even now. As the officer guided me toward the patrol car, I saw Lily break away from the hotel entrance and run toward me. "Mom," she called, her voice cracking. "Mom, wait." The officer paused, allowing her to reach us. "Lily, I'm so sorry," I whispered, unable to embrace her with my hands restrained. "I never wanted you to see any of this. Are they arresting you?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. Just taking me in for questioning, I lied, trying to protect her from this final indignity. Your father will take you home, she shook her head vehemently. I'm not going with him. I can't. You can stay with Mia tonight, I suggested, glancing toward her friend who hovered nearby. I'll call you as soon as I can. Lily nodded, wiping at her tears. I hate him for doing this to us. No, Lily. Despite everything, I couldn't let her carry that burden. Hate what he did, not who he is. He's still your father. The officer gently indicated that we needed to go. As he helped me into the back of the patrol car, I caught one last glimpse of my family. Lily standing alone in the rain, Ethan watching helplessly from a distance. The life we had built together lying in ruins around us. The patrol car pulled away from the Hawthorne Hotel, leaving behind the physical wreckage of the crash. But the emotional destruction had only just begun. The holding cell at the police station was cold and impersonal. Hard bench, concrete walls, the persistent hum of fluorescent lighting. I sat with my arms wrapped around myself, the thin blanket they'd provided doing little to ward off the chill that seemed to come as much from within as from the room itself. After 3 hours of processing, fingerprints, photographs, breathalyzer tests, and paperwork, I had been placed in the cell to wait. For what exactly, I wasn't sure. Mourning, perhaps, or bail, or some divine intervention that would wake me from this nightmare. Thorne, a female officer called, unlocking the cell door. Your bail's been posted. I looked up, confused. By whom? Your sister, she replied, checking her clipboard. Lauren Thorne Martinez. Relief washed over me. Not Ethan. I couldn't face him yet. Lauren was waiting in the reception area, her expression a mixture of concern and carefully contained anger. At 46, my older sister had always been my protector, my voice of reason. Today she looked like both roles were wearing on her. Thank you, I said quietly as we walked to her car. Don't thank me yet, she replied, her voice tight. I've got about 1,000 questions and I expect answers. But first, you need a shower and some sleep. Lauren's condo was a stark contrast to the suburban home I shared with Ethan. Minimalist, modern and meticulously organized, reflecting her life as a single, childless corporate attorney. She showed me to the guest room, provided fresh towels and a change of clothes, then left me alone to decompress. As she put it, the hot shower washed away the physical remnants of the night, the rain, the smell of alcohol, the lingering sensation of handcuffs around my wrists, but did nothing for the hollowness inside me. As I stood under the spray, I replayed the events of the past few hours, still unable to fully comprehend how I had gone from suburban wife and mother to someone who deliberately crashed her car and spent the night in jail. When I emerged, dressed in Lauren's borrowed sweatpants and t-shirt, I found her in the kitchen. 2 mugs of steaming tea on the counter between us. Lily called, she said without preamble. She's at Mia's house. She's safe, I nodded, relief washing over me. Did she say anything else? Just that she doesn't want to talk to Ethan. Lauren pushed one of the mugs toward me. Now, are you going to tell me what the hell happened? Because all I got from Lily was something about you crashing your car into Ethan's at a hotel where he was meeting another woman. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, drawing comfort from its heat. That's the condensed version, yes. Rebecca. Lauren's voice softened. This isn't you. You don't drink and drive. You don't crash cars. What happened? The whole story spilled out then. The gradual distancing, the suspicions, the evidence that built up over months, and finally, the messages that confirmed everything. As I spoke, Lauren's expression shifted from confusion to anger to grim understanding. So instead of confronting him directly, you decided to stake out the hotel and then commit a felony? She asked when I finished. Put that way, it sounded absurd. I wasn't thinking clearly, I admitted. I just snapped. Lauren sighed, running a hand through her short, practical haircut. You know I'm on your side here. What Ethan did is inexcusable, but this? She gestured vaguely, encompassing the situation. This complicates everything. I know, I whispered, tears threatening again. I've made such a mess of things. Not just you, she corrected firmly. Ethan started this. But now we need to think about damage control, legally and for Lily's sake. My phone, which Lauren had retrieved along with my personal effects from the station, buzzed on the counter. Ethan's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it, paralyzed. You don't have to talk to him, Lauren said. Not yet, but I knew avoidance would only prolong the inevitable. With a deep breath, I answered the call. Rebecca. Ethan's voice was ragged, as if he hadn't slept. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm at Lauren's, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. I'm fine. I've been trying to reach you all night. The police wouldn't tell me anything after they took you in. Well, that's standard procedure when they arrest someone. Ethan, they don't give updates to the person responsible for the arrest. His sharp intake of breath was audible. I didn't press charges, Rebecca. You know that. How generous of you, I said, bitterness creeping into my tone. Considering the circumstances, a long pause followed. We need to talk. Not over the phone. Face to face. The thought of seeing him made my stomach churn, but he was right. There were logistics to discuss, decisions to be made. Lily's well-being to consider. Fine, I conceded, but not today. I need time. Tomorrow, then, he pressed. Our house. Neutral ground. I almost laughed at that. The house we had shared, where he had lied to me for months, could hardly be considered neutral. But I agreed to meet him the following afternoon. After ending the call, I looked at Lauren, who had been pretending not to listen. He wants to talk tomorrow. Are you ready for that? She asked, concern evident in her expression. No, I admitted, but it has to happen sometime. The next morning, after a fitful night's sleep on Lauren's guest bed, I called Lily. Our conversation was brief and strained. She was still processing, still angry, still hurt. She agreed to stay with Mia for another day while Ethan and I sorted things out. I don't hate him, she said at one point, her voice small. But I don't know how to look at him right now. I understand, sweetheart, I replied, my heart breaking for her. Take all the time you need. Lauren drove me to the house at the appointed time, offering to wait outside in case things went poorly. I declined, knowing this confrontation needed to happen without an audience. The house looked exactly as I had left it 2 days ago. The same potted plants on the porch, the same welcome mat, the same carefully maintained facade of domestic tranquility. Only now I could see the cracks in the veneer, the emptiness behind the picture-perfect image we had cultivated. Ethan opened the door before I could use my key. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, still wearing the clothes from yesterday. Rebecca, he said, stepping back to let me in. Thank you for coming. I entered the foyer, suddenly feeling like a visitor in my own home. I'm here to talk about Lily and what happens next. Nothing else. He nodded, leading the way to the kitchen, the heart of the home, where we had shared meals, helped with homework, celebrated birthdays. Now it felt like a stage set, the backdrop for the final act of our marriage. We sat across from each other at the island counter, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. Ethan was the first to break it. I called a lawyer this morning, he said, about the DUI charges. He thinks we can get them reduced, maybe even dismissed, given the circumstances and your clean record. I don't need your help with legal matters, I replied stiffly. Lauren's taking care of it. Of course. He nodded, looking down at his hands. I just wanted you to know I'm not. I would never let you face that alone. How considerate, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Was that before or after you called Diana to make sure she was okay? Ethan flinched. Rebecca, I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it, Ethan. The calm I had maintained since entering the house began to crack. You lied to me. For months. You betrayed every promise you ever made to me. To us. I know, he said quietly. And I'm sorry. More sorry than I can express? Sorry you did it or sorry you got caught? He looked up then, meeting my gaze directly. Both. I never meant for any of this to happen. A harsh laugh escaped me. Things like this don't just happen, Ethan. You made choices. Every text, every lie, every time you were with her, those were all choices. You're right. He ran a hand over his face. I'm not trying to excuse what I did. I don't know how we got here. I think you have a pretty good idea, I countered. What I want to know is why. After 15 years, why her? Why now? Ethan was silent for a long moment, seemingly gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was measured, careful. It wasn't about her, not really. It was about feeling valued, appreciated. Somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing each other. Really seeing each other. You were so consumed with Lily, with your freelance work, with keeping everything running perfectly. And I was drowning in the pressure of the partnership, the expectations. So this is my fault? I asked incredulously. I was too busy taking care of our daughter and our home while building my career, so you decided to sleep with your project manager? No, he said firmly. That's not what I'm saying. The affair, that's on me, completely. But the distance between us? The unhappiness? That was both of us. I wanted to deny it, to place all the blame squarely on his shoulders. But beneath my anger, I knew there was a kernel of truth to his words. We had both contributed to the distance between us, both retreated into our separate worlds instead of fighting for our connection. So what now? I asked, suddenly exhausted. Where do we go from here? Ethan hesitated. I've ended things with Diana completely. The statement hung in the air between us. I had expected to feel something at this news, relief perhaps, or vindication. Instead, I felt nothing. Whether he continued seeing her or not seemed irrelevant now. The damage was done, and what do you expect me to say to that? I finally responded. Thank you? Congratulations on doing the bare minimum of decency? I don't expect anything, he said, his voice strained. I just wanted you to know. What about Lily? I asked, steering the conversation toward the one person who mattered most in all of this. She saw everything, Ethan. She knows what you did. Pain flashed across his face. I know. I've tried calling her, texting her. She won't respond. Can you blame her? No, he admitted. But she's my daughter. I need to make this right with her somehow. You can't just fix this with an apology and a promise to be better, I said. She trusted you. We both did. That trust is broken now. Ethan nodded, a hint of resignation in his expression. So what do you want, Rebecca? A divorce? The word hung heavy between us. Divorce. The end of 15 years. The dismantling of the life we had built. A few days ago, the very thought would have seemed impossible. Now it felt inevitable. I don't know what I want yet, I answered honestly. But I know I can't stay in this house with you right now. I need space. Time to think. I understand, he said softly. I can stay at a hotel or with Mark. You and Lily should be here in your home. The gesture surprised me, though it shouldn't have. Whatever his failings as a husband, Ethan had always put Lily first. That would be appropriate, I acknowledged. As Ethan moved to stand, a flicker of the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago showed through the stranger he had become. For what it's worth, I never stopped loving you, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I just lost my way. Lost us. The words pierced through the armor of anger I had wrapped around myself. I loved you too, I replied, the past tense deliberate and cutting. With everything I had. He winced at the past tense but didn't challenge it. I'll pack some things and be out by this evening. Take as much time as you need. The house is yours for as long as you want it. As he turned to leave the kitchen, I found myself asking the one question that had haunted me since discovering the affair. Was she worth it? Was she worth destroying everything we built? Ethan stopped, his back to me. For a long moment, he was silent. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Nothing would have been worth this. Nothing. With that, he left the room, leaving me alone with the wreckage of our marriage and the uncertain path forward. 6 months later. The conference room at Hartwell & Associates was austere and impersonal. Polished mahogany table, plush leather chairs, abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than my car. My car, not our car. I was still getting used to thinking in singular rather than plural terms. My attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s named Patricia Hartwell, reviewed the documents one last time before sliding them across the table. Everything's in order. Once you both sign, it's done. Across from me, Ethan sat with his own attorney, a colleague of Patricia's who specialized in amicable divorces. As if divorce could ever truly be amicable. But I had to admit, ours had been surprisingly civil, all things considered. After the confrontation in our kitchen 6 months ago, we had both sought individual therapy. I needed to process not just the betrayal, but my own reaction to it, the rage that had led me to crash my car, endangering myself and others. The charges had been reduced to reckless driving. With community service and a hefty fine that Ethan had insisted on paying, despite my objections, Lily had eventually agreed to see Ethan, first with a family therapist present, then for brief, awkward dinners and weekend outings. Their relationship was still strained, but healing. She would be leaving for college in the fall, UCLA, her dream school, and I sometimes wondered if the distance would help repair what had been broken between them. As for Diana, she had transferred to another branch of the firm in Seattle. Whether that was her choice or a consequence of the affair, I didn't know or care. She was no longer part of our story. Rebecca? Patricia's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Are you ready? I looked down at the divorce papers, the legal dissolution of 15 years of marriage, reduced to clauses and subclauses, assets and liabilities, custody arrangements even though Lily would be 18 in a matter of months. Yes, I said, picking up the pen. I'm ready. I signed my name on the indicated lines, then slid the documents to Ethan. Our fingers brushed briefly during the exchange, the first physical contact we'd had in months. A small jolt of familiarity passed between us, then faded. Ethan signed without hesitation, his signature as confident and bold as always. When he finished, he looked up at me, his expression unreadable. That's it then? That's it, Patricia confirmed, gathering the papers. We'll file these with the court today. You'll receive the final decree in about 30 days. Outside the law office, the spring air was fresh and clean, carrying the scent of new beginnings. Ethan and I stood awkwardly on the sidewalk, no longer husband and wife, not quite strangers. Can I buy you a coffee? He asked suddenly. For closure, I guess, I hesitated. We had maintained a careful distance these past months, interacting only when necessary for Lily's sake or through our attorneys. But something about the finality of the signatures made me nod. Coffee sounds fine. We walked to a nearby cafe in silence. Ordered our drinks, he still remembered how I took mine, and found a quiet table in the corner. The house sold quickly, Ethan commented, referring to the suburban home we had put on the market 2 months ago. Another joint decision, another tie severed. Yes, I agreed. The market's good right now. We fell silent again, sipping our coffees and avoiding the heavier topics that hung between us. How's your new place? He finally asked. I had found a modern townhouse closer to downtown, using my portion of the house proceeds as a down payment. It's good. Smaller, but that suits me. Lily has her own room for when she's home from college. And your design business? After years of freelancing on the side, I had finally taken the plunge and started my own graphic design firm. Growing steadily. I just hired an assistant last month. Ethan nodded, a hint of genuine pride in his expression. I always knew you could do it. You were holding yourself back for too long? The observation stung with its accuracy. I had held myself back, prioritizing his career and our family over my own ambitions. It had taken the implosion of our marriage for me to finally pursue what I had always wanted. What about you? I asked, more out of politeness than genuine interest. The condo working out? It's fine, he replied with a shrug. Just a place to sleep, really. I've been traveling a lot for work. Another silence stretched between us. Outside the cafe window, people hurried past, couples holding hands, mothers with strollers, business people glued to their phones. Life continuing in all its mundane glory while we sat in the aftermath of our own private cataclysm. I saw you, you know, Ethan said suddenly. Last week at Riverside Park. You were jogging. I looked up, surprised. I didn't see you. I was driving past. You looked happy. Was I happy? The question had occupied much of my therapy sessions these past months. I wasn't sure happy was the right word, but I was finding my way toward something like contentment. I'm getting there, I admitted. Some days are better than others. Ethan nodded, understanding in his eyes. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, Rebecca. The way you've handled everything, the way you've been there for Lily, the way you've rebuilt your life. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. The compliment was unexpected, and I found myself unsure how to respond. Thank you, I finally said. I'm learning that about myself too. He smiled then, a small, sad smile that reminded me of the younger Ethan, the one who had won my heart in college with his earnest charm and ambitious dreams. Do you think we could ever— No, I interrupted gently, knowing where the question was headed. We can't go back, Ethan, he nodded, accepting the finality in my tone. I know, I miss you sometimes. Not just you, us. The family we were. I miss that too, I admitted. But that doesn't mean we should try again. Some things once broken can't be fixed. And some things, he countered, are worth trying to fix. I studied him across the table. This man I had loved, hated, and now regarded with a complex mixture of emotions that defied simple categorization. There was a time when his persistence would have swayed me, when I would have been willing to try again for the sake of our history, our family, the comfort of the familiar. But that time had passed. In the wreckage of our marriage, I had discovered parts of myself that had been dormant for years. My resilience, my independence, my capacity for growth and change. I wasn't willing to risk losing those parts again. We'll always be connected because of Lily, I said finally. And I think with time, we might even be friends of a sort. But anything more than that, I shook my head. That chapter is closed. Disappointment flickered across his face, but he didn't argue. I understand, and I respect your decision. We finished our coffees in a silence that was not entirely uncomfortable. As we prepared to leave, Ethan reached across the table, not quite touching me, but close. I am sorry, Rebecca, for everything. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know I mean it. I looked at his outstretched hand, then up at his face, sincere, regretful, but also accepting of the consequences of his actions. I know you are, I said softly. And I forgive you, Ethan. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger around is exhausting, and I'm ready to put it down. Relief washed over his features. Thank you. That means everything. Outside the cafe, we stood on the sidewalk once more, this time with a sense of genuine closure. Lily wants us both at her orientation weekend in August, I mentioned. Think you can handle that? He smiled, a real smile this time. For Lily? Absolutely. Good, I nodded. We'll coordinate closer to the date. As we prepared to go our separate ways, Ethan back to his office downtown, me to a client meeting across town, he hesitated. Rebecca, I hope you find someone who deserves you. Someone better than I was. The statement caught me off guard. I hadn't thought about dating, about starting over with someone new. That seemed like a distant concern, something for another chapter of my life that I wasn't ready to begin just yet. I'm not looking for that right now, I told him honestly. I'm focusing on myself, on Lily, on building something that's entirely mine. Still, he insisted. When you're ready, you deserve to be happy. I smiled at that, a genuine smile that felt like the first real one in a very long time. So do you, Ethan. So do you. We parted then, walking in opposite directions along the bustling sidewalk. I didn't look back, but I knew he did. One last glance at what we had been, what we had lost, what we had survived. As I walked toward my next appointment, my phone buzzed with a text from Lily. How did it go? I paused, considering how to answer. The truth was complicated, layered with grief and relief, endings and beginnings. But some truths are simpler than others. It's done, I texted back. We're okay, all of us. And for the first time in a very long time, I believed it. Later that evening, as I sat on the balcony of my new townhouse, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of gold and pink, I thought about the journey of the past 6 months. From the moment of discovery in the hotel parking lot to the signing of divorce papers, I had traveled through rage and despair to reach a place of cautious hope. The woman who had crashed her car in a fit of vengeful fury seemed like a stranger. Now, a version of myself pushed to the breaking point by betrayal and disillusionment. I didn't regret the emotions that had driven me that night, but I had learned to channel them differently, to use them as fuel for rebuilding rather than destruction. My phone buzzed again. A text from Lauren. "Drinks tomorrow to celebrate your freedom?" I smiled, typing back, "Not celebrating exactly, but drinks sound good." "PM, the Overlook," she replied. "First round's on me." I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath of the evening air. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and triumphs. The business I was growing, the daughter I was preparing to send into the world, the new life I was creating for myself. All works in progress. All worthy of my energy and attention. But for now, in this quiet moment between what was and what would be, I allowed myself to simply exist in the present, untethered from the past, unconcerned with the future. For now, it was enough to have survived the storm and found myself still standing, stronger and more certain than before. The sun dipped below the horizon, the last rays of light fading into dusk. One day ending, another beginning. Life continuing as it always does, even after the most devastating of storms. I was ready for whatever came next.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.